Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And Chandan, glad to be having this chat with you here in front of a lovely audience.
Thank you. Pleasure.
What we'll spend the next few minutes talking is the 7 dimensions of digital maturity in marketing specifically. What you've heard through the day, and especially the last session, I think very, very important on how what we take as micro steps in marketing and how we take this into a more of a strategic, bigger impact for the brand are very important. And hopefully during the day, you would have realized through multiple sessions how these need to come to life on the back of multiple capabilities, right? What does a brand, a marketeer, an organization need to deliver that kind of an impact and that growth? It's very, very important. So what, together with Google and MMA, what we did over the last several months is intense research, thinking, and came up with a framework which is 7 dimensional and captures all the core capabilities that a marketing organization need to possess. Of course, the higher you are on that maturity scale, the better it is from a brand perspective, but these are all essential, critical for the brand's growth. Very important framework. Maybe I'll take a couple of minutes to introduce that framework, and if we can have that on the backdrop, it'll be easier for audience to understand and go through that as well. The 7 dimensions include key aspects of marketing. First and foremost is essentially your audience reach, right? How is a brand planning to reach the audience? Which is your right TG? How would you engage with them effectively? And how would that lead to brand growth is very, very critical. And this is something that's core to a marketeer. Call it part of the strategy itself for both the brand and marketing. But what then drives the growth for brand is the focus on customer experience. Critical. Without a focus on customer experience and what we believed through this research and coming up into this framework, it's not going to be possible to drive brand growth. Very essential. And then, of course, there are elements of data. There are elements of technology on marketing side, on first-party data side, which are critical for an organization to become stronger in marketing. First party data, I'm sure you would have learned, understood across the day and multiple sessions over the 2 days that it's very, very important. How do you put that to use? If not for marketing automation and MarTech solutions available, it'll not give you the benefits that one intends to for the brand. But also important is the aspect of analytics, insights that you are able to generate from it, and how do you leverage that for your planning of campaigns, of engagement with the consumers. Not to miss other aspects, right? Equally important is how you are structured as an organization. What capabilities exist where? How do you define KPIs for marketing? Marketing today is a growth agenda. It drives business outcomes. The businesses, brands are looking for growth, for relevance to consumers and to our RTG. That will happen when we have defined it, structured the organization very well. Very important point. And finally, you will not be able to do all of this alone, and hence the ecosystem is very, very important for you to ensure all of these are brought to life. In areas where an organization or your teams are weak, how can you leverage ecosystem partnership to make sure you strengthen that? And that becomes very important as well. These 7 dimensions, tested, proven, thoroughly researched, Accenture, Google, MMA came together to ensure this is very, very relevant. While we could not have Bhaskar join us in person today, we do have a short video snippet from him explaining how we essentially got to this framework. So if we can please have the AV played, we'll want to hear what Bhaskar has to say as well. And then, Chandan, I'll come to you in a minute on how we take this forward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bhaskar Ramesh, and I'm a director with Google India and also a proud member of the MMA India board. I'm here to discuss with you the very special digital maturity assessment framework co-developed by Google, Accenture, and MMA India. And we are very proud of this work. It all started when the board was discussing that the operating rhythm of the world has changed dramatically and it is increasingly digital. However, what the industry lacks is a common frame of reference to measure the digital maturity, which is so different across different sectors and different companies. And we really want to understand what is the picture of success and what is the roadmap if a company wants to go through that journey. And that's how the whole journey started, and it's taken multi quarters of extremely collaborative effort. We thank all the board members for their inputs into making this into a big success. And more importantly, I specifically want to thank Arvind from McDonald's and Chandan from Nestle for being one of the first companies to try this out and have seen the results themselves firsthand, which encouraged many more others to actually like try. So it just takes 6 weeks. We made it very practical. You will not just understand where you are in the maturity assessment, but you'll also have a set of steps on what needs to be followed to move up the arc. So I really hope that this becomes a common tool for the whole industry to embrace. And I encourage all of you to have a look at it and try it out for your respective companies. So thank you all for listening, and I wish I was there in person, but enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaskar, in his absence here. Chandan, thank you again for being one of the volunteers to be part of this maturity assessment and running it through Nestle. It'll be interesting to know what your journey was as you went through this entire digital maturity assessment and the key points that audience can benefit from.
Sure. Well, thank you, Deepak, for that question. And of course, it's a very strong and a very well-structured digital maturity assessment, like Deepak mentioned, the best of Google and Accenture and a very strong team which sort of, supports this entire initiative together with the might of MMA thinking also behind it. So it's a very robust and very structured kind of a process. And that's important because, if you look at digital transformation, it's a topic that if you are in this world of rapid changes and so many things that are happening all the time, digital transformation is a given. I mean, you will have to be in that game and you will have to understand your maturity and go through the journey of it. And it's an ever evolving and an agile thing which is always on in a way. So there is no, it's not organizations which are just going to dabble into it and then dabble out of it and do it like a project or two are not the ones that are going to win. The guys who are going to win are going to be very consistent and deliver and run through it almost as a daily and hourly and a minute-by-minute thing. I mean, that's the kind of embedding that is required. And therefore, in order to understand whether you have all the elements which works towards this is something that the digital maturity assessment tries to do. So it's a very comprehensive framework. It's almost like a 360 degrees to, understanding where you are and where you stand and so on, and whether it's all embedded in. The place where we started, and there's a very strong process, it goes through some virtual interviews and then it goes through some in-person interviews. It's a 6-week process. Depending on the resources you have, it could be a little longer or could be a bit shorter. You can also fast track through some of the elements. But it's very important to look at all the dimensions. And the place where I would start is really organization and people practices. Is it really embedded through the life and blood of the organization of people? Are they kind of, thinking digital all the time through all the different elements? And not just that, actually looking at it from a business point of view, actually looking at it from a strategic point of view, brand point of view as well. So a very holistic kind of an approach out there. And of course, the other elements, are very, very important and very, very interlinked in a way and so on. And the way we approached it was to assess, where are we in this journey? And with a very open mind, with sort of a mind to understand, are we good at a few things? Are we doing all the right things? Are we missing few things? Do we have a plan? Is it all well embedded? And that was the kind of, simple way in which we looked at things. And the findings, and the process and the questions that this goes through, and it's a cross-functional team that really works through the entire thing. So it's not just one function or one part of the organization. It's the entire organization that comes together to assess it. And we looked at all the different elements. There were aspects, where we were brilliant at basics. I think that was good. There were some elements where we need to accelerate where we needed to also, sort of step up our game. And there were other elements where we could leapfrog to sort of, build it as a big advantage for the future based on where things are going and what's the next thing coming and how to really stay ahead of the curve. Because the advantage is really about digital transformation is that, you have to be in it to stay ahead of the curve. Otherwise, you're not really playing the game and really taking all of digital to your advantage. So that's how we looked at it, and there were some elements, that we identified, which were like, low-hanging fruits, and some elements where we were, already well into the process, but we could sharpen a few things. We could benchmark a few things with some of the good practices in the industry, and that's what the team also brings in and brings that little bit of an outside-in view around different things and good practices. And there were some areas where we were probably a little bit behind. We hadn't thought through our marketing tech stack very well. While we had different pieces, they were not probably talking to each other and well connected. And those are things that we sort of, developed a little further. Gen AI was another area where we said that, how do we promptly use Gen AI? It's not about AI and Gen AI are sort of there everywhere, but what's the promptness of the organization? What's the agility of the organization to make good use of it, full use of it, purposeful and intentional use of it? And what are the mechanisms that we need to have? What are the capabilities that we need to have in order to develop this? So overall, very well structured program, I would say, and helps you to navigate your thinking and set the sort of agenda for the future.
Very insightful. I picked 2 points, Chandan, what you said. One around inside out interviews and then some outside in perspective. And then I picked Gen AI. I'll hold Gen AI for a minute, and for audience, it'll naturally be a bit of an attraction to know about Gen AI. We'll come back to that. But the framework essentially looks at inside out, understanding how your organization behaves, what kind of data you have, people, process, technology. It also brings out outside in perspective, tries to do a bit of an assessment of what's best in class, what others are doing, what should you really look up to, and so on. How is that outside in perspective looked inside the organization? When your teams looked at, aha, there's something different. Is that easy to adapt? Is that difficult to do? How did you and your teams act on that outside in perspective specifically?
Well, for us, and thank you, that's a great question. For us, if you look at all the different measures and you have a rating from sort of 1 to 5, or it could be 0 to 5 actually. And luckily, for us, because of the work done by leaders across generations, on organization and people practices, we were rated a 5 on 5. So therefore, from that perspective, we have the openness in the organization to challenge ourselves, to think, whether things are working, not working, because the general tendency could be, oh, I'm doing a good job in this and this, depending on where we are. But that's not the objective. The objective also is to have that curiosity, to learn and to see what could be done better, where there are opportunities to step up to be best in class. Are we leaving some things on the table, not really pushing the agenda hard enough, and so on. And therefore, the outside-in perspective helped a lot. For example, and there were some areas which probably are more like, areas which haven't been fully done at an industry level as well. For example, while we are collecting a lot of first-party data, which you could potentially use with some of the Q-commerce platforms which are rising at a very, very rapid pace, do we have the right infrastructure of data clean rooms where you could share that first-party data, make full use of it together with our Q-com partners to really drive the agenda forward? I mean, that's something which we were doing in pieces, in parts, and so on, more on a sort of, let us say, a case-by-case basis, but not really there. And therefore, what do we really need to think? How should we build our ecosystem and partnerships to get there, and how can we bring in more an outside-in perspective to step up the game? So we were lucky that, we have the right people mindset to be able to absorb those things. But then the real thing is, how do you really look at the outside and see what more or what real things I could do, or what do we need to change ourselves in order to really get there?
Very interesting thoughts. Maybe at this stage, if you're okay, Chandan, we'll take a pause. We'll also want to hear from Arvind, who is, again, not here, but one of the pioneers who partnered with us on the digital maturity assessment as well. So if you can please have a video bite from Arvind played, so we hear what has been McDonald's experience, very similar to what you talked about, Chandan, on Nestle.
Hello everyone, I'm Arvind. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for McDonald's India. And today I'm here to talk to you about MMA's digital maturity framework and how it enabled McDonald's in its data and digital transformation journey. I think it's fair to say that every marketeer out there is either drawing up or redrawing their data and digital journeys to unlock growth. In such a journey, I think assessing the foundation is very, very important. How strong is a foundation and what needs to be done to set the foundation right? And that's where such a framework really comes in handy. The framework developed by Google and Accenture is quite comprehensive. It assesses various aspects like, for example, user experience as far as your apps go. For example, in McDonald's context, the food delivery app that we have, McDelivery, or the first party data collection and the modeling that you run around it. And finally, marketing automation, right? How sophisticated are those tactics? Arguably, even people is a part of that foundation. So the people readiness, the people quality, ways of working is also a part of this framework. So in sum, it's a very comprehensive framework that's very, very useful for marketers to assess how strong the organization is in terms of foundation. I would strongly recommend applying these frameworks to your organization. And when we did it exercise about 2 years back, we kind of identified about 2 to 3 opportunity areas. And since then, we have vastly improved our delivery on those 3 opportunity areas. Thanks to Google and Accenture for taking out the time to put together this framework, but also adapt this framework to one's organizational context. I would strongly recommend this to all the marketing folks out there. Thank you, MMA India.
Thank you, Arvind and the McDonald's team. Chandan, back at you. How do you see this framework relevant and possibly being leveraged rightfully in the world that we are living now, which is Gen AI powered?
Right. So, like the framework tries to bring in terms of thinking and in terms of structure, is that fundamentals are fundamental. So I think very, very important that we have the right data foundation, right? We have the right foundation and the right fundamentals in place, the right organization and the right people in place, the agility, the mindset, which are very important to apply AI and Gen AI. I mean, that's the most important thing to sort of, build in the experimentation capability and all of that, to test and learn and all of that. So that really is the foundation of where this entire thing goes. Gen AI can be used, like we saw through the framework, could be used in content, could be used in media, could be used in engagement. And that's how we sort of, looked at all the 3 areas from an end-to-end kind of perspective to see both content, media, and AI and engagement, and what could be the capabilities of the organization to be able to really take Gen AI in the right way, have the right objectives outlined, have the right processes outlined, have the right elements of agility outlined, have the right tools as well, and there's so many tools out there, in this entire space. How are you applying the right tools to the right problem that you want to solve? So identify very clearly what is it that you're trying to look at, what are the problems to solve, and how do you really identify what you would make use of from a Gen AI perspective. Do you have the right people and the right capabilities and the right mindset and the right agility to be able to do it? Do you have capabilities to promptly turn it into action? Because in a world which is fast moving, it's not about waiting and trying to see what is next and so on, which is important on one side, but to be also able to leverage the current capabilities and the tools and to evolve along with it, to see how you could evolve. If you look at Gen AI maybe a year back and the kind of output it was throwing up versus what it's doing now in terms of the kind of output, and if you go to agentic and all of that and the new developments, I think there are a lot of developments. And the thing that the tool and the framework help you assimilate and really understand and embed in the organization is that you have to be in this continuous journey. It's no longer about just dabbling into a few things and getting out, but having that journey mindset to always see what do I do next and where do I really strengthen and what do I do go from here. And that's where Gen AI and all the capabilities around Gen AI, from content. I mean, media, there's so many different use cases within it, and on engagement as well, and trying to see how you could personalize better and how you could engage better, all the different use cases out there. But the most important thing is mindset, to be able to use it, because often, we still do have a few people who say that, oh yeah, this needs much more strategic thinking. Yes, it does, and that's the foundational layer, but we also need to have the appetite to be able to use the tools and the technologies to move ahead.
Of course, very, very important point. One last question. Um, did you, during the course of the 6 to 8 weeks while running this framework, faced any challenges? I know you talked about the team that is great, and the maturity and the 5-on-5, that especially on the operating model and the organization side that the tool through. But any specific challenges that you want to call out, or anything that you believe is like is something that people might be thinking that it's very difficult to adopt, but in reality it is not, especially given the experience we've had with Nestle?
I think, at the very start, while we knew we had a strong organization, but, it was good to kind of get that sense also from the team conducting this digital maturity that, our organization and people practices were good and we got that rating. But to start with, because we didn't have that outside in perspective, we never knew that we were there. But that was a good starting point. I think there's a little bit of skepticism sometimes, and it was there with a few different people on whether this is going to really add value. We know all of this, we have heard about and know ecosystems and audience reach and technology and data and analytics. There are no new words in it. But, is this really going to help? Is it worth the 6 to 8 week effort? So I think in the beginning, you have to really, believe in what it is and that it has been thought through by a whole team of experts. And, the might of MMA, Accenture, Google is all behind this framework. So it's a well thought through, well structured program. And then if you have that mindset and a little bit of openness is required, which the leadership in the organization has to also set and say that, okay, let's examine, let's see, let's view on what it is. I think that's one element, which is a little bit of an initial thing, which happens especially when you're trying to assess something, a little bit externally. And then the second part is that it's a little bit of an intense program. So while the questions are simple, but you get into the questions and the depth of the questions and really look at them holistically, it does require some effort and some thinking of putting it together, but it's time well spent. I mean, having been through it, I think it's time well spent, and together with the partner team that works on it, I think it's a good experience to run through it. Getting time sometimes of internal people may be a little difficult, especially because it's a multifunctional team and all of that. So you have to manage through some of those, a little bit of logistical challenges, I would say, but it's time well spent at the end of it. And you could also, sort of have some good discussions with the team. I think it's also enriching to have those discussions and get those views around, all the different elements and how others are doing it and what could you do better and what are the best practices. Very enriching discussions. And then as the program progressed, I think there was much more confidence of everyone through the program. And then when we had a well-structured report, and it's very, the report that we got at the end of it and all the discussions was not just insightful, but very, very actionable. So it's not that, it's a program which is conceptually right in terms of framework and all of that. It's insightful, it's actionable, it sets you, gives you a sense of, okay, these are areas which are good, these are areas where you can move faster, better, stronger, these are areas which you need to kind of, drive even further. And also gives you a sense of how could you do it. You at least have a good starting point from here, and then you have to take it forward the way it is. So I would think a well thought through program, I must say, and congratulations to you and everybody in the team who have been sort of, part in developing this and actually bringing it to life.
Thank you, Chandra. No, thanks for being very, very candid with your experiences and the learnings and the benefits essentially that the team was able to draw. I think it's heartening to know that something that usually gets thought through with and by the experts, that this is what should be the framework. This is what should be the benchmarks, etc. Beyond the quote unquote a classroom setting, gets into a real life world test with Nestle, with McDonald's, and so on. Passes, sees that day of light, and the feedback and what the outcomes have been are truly encouraging, right? That's the testament to, yes, this is valid, this is realistic, this is relevant to brands and the market in India. So thank you, thanks a lot for being very very candid. I'll just close the conversation by encouraging all of you to understand more about the framework. It's available with MMA, of course, and happy to have conversations with any one of you around. It's a powerful framework, a very powerful tool that sets the foundations. The few challenges that Chandan mentioned are something totally worth the pain, I would say, as we go through this process and make sure the strong foundations are laid out for a growth journey for any marketing organization. So with that, I'll pause here. Thanks a lot, and hopefully the session was encouraging for you. And Chandan, thanks specifically for you too. Thank you.